Of all the branches in the United States military, there is only one uniform that incorporates the red, white, and blue of the American flag. That uniform is worn by the United States Marines. The uniform of the United States Marine not only stands for excellence in the line of defense and on the field of battle, but for its over 200 years of history. Since the 19th century, the dress blues worn by the United States Marine Corps officers have remained largely unchanged. It is ever present, just as those who serve in the Corps are ever vigilant, and is a symbol of the unwavering dedication to the country and the ideas those individuals protect. Only the highest caliber person can don any Marine uniform, be it dress blues, service greens, or the utility uniform worn by those on the field of battle. Join us in our continuing study of the history of the United States Marine Corps. When the United States finally entered World War I in 1918, the Marine Corps found it necessary and beneficial to allow women to enlist in the Marine Corps Reserve for clerical duties. On August 13, 1918, Opha May Johnson became the first of over 300 women to enlist in the Marine Corps Reserve that year. Johnson and the hundreds of other women were trained and took over for battle-ready Marines who were needed overseas.
The Battle of Belleau Wood was for the U.S. the biggest battle since Appomattox, and the most considerable engagement American troops had ever had with a foreign enemy.
On the 1st of June, 1918, the French towns of Château-Thierry and Vaux were overtaken by the invading German troops. They then set their sights on Belleau Wood. The U.S. Army's 2nd Division, which included a brigade of U.S. Marines, along with the 1st and 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, were able to successfully halt the advancing Germans. German forces weren't so easily turned away, however, for the Huns dug in their heels and a battle raged in Belleau Wood. When the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines attacked on June 6th, Gunnery Sergeant Dan Daly, as legend has it, shouted to his men as they attacked the Germans.
Come on, you sons of bitches! Do you want to live forever?
The first wave of troops from the 3rd were slaughtered. However, tenacious fighting from the 5th and 6th Marine Corps were able to drive back the Germans, at times only fighting with bayonets or even bare hands. United States forces suffered a loss of over 1,800 men, but successfully drove the Germans out on June 26, 1918. The Germans were astonished by the gung-ho Marines. Legend and Marine Corps recruiting posters at the time reported that this battle earned the Marines a nickname from the Germans, Teufelhunden. Translation: devil dogs. Whether or not this nickname was really used by the enemy, the German soldiers who witnessed the Marine fighting all agreed that they were a force to be reckoned with and of stormtrooper caliber. The first Iron Mike, or commemorative statue of a Marine, was commissioned and sculpted quite by accident. At the close of World War I, General John J. Pershing issued an order to have a statue commissioned that would commemorate the United States Army Doughboy. Depending on which legend was used, the sculptor Charles Raphael Pear was either enamored of the bravery of the United States Marine or simply didn't know the difference in uniforms among U.S. branches of military. Pershing insisted on changes, but the artist refused to have his work censored in any way. Pershing would not let the Army buy the statue, but finally, the Marine Corps acquired the monument, officially entitled Crusading for Right, and had it installed in front of the Marine Corps Training and Education Command Headquarters at Marine Corps Base Quantico, Virginia, where it stands to this day. A proper monument to those who served at Belleau Wood stands today at the Aisne Marne American Cemetery and Memorial, which features a bronze relief on black marble of a United States Marine. Sculpted by Felix Wise de Welden, the artist who later designed the giant Marine Corps War Memorial in Washington, D.C., the statue was erected to honor the 5th and 6th Marine Regiments of the 4th Marine Brigade that so bravely fought there. Belleau Wood had been renamed the Wood of the Marine Brigade by the time this Iron Mike was dedicated in 1923.
In every war, the aggressor has an overwhelming advantage in the early phases. The nation attacked is rarely prepared for the aggressor's first strike. In the 1920s and 30s, the people of the United States gave little thought to war. The nation was geared completely to the pursuits of peace. But in 1940, the picture changed abruptly, and a year later, peace was only a memory.
The first major offensive of World War II in the Pacific Theater was the Guadalcanal Campaign, and one of the first groups to mobilize for the attack was the 1st Marine Division, led by Marine Major General Alexander Vandegrift. Initially stationed in New Zealand, the 1st Marines and other Allied forces, mostly American, soon liberated the island of Guadalcanal that had been conquered by the Japanese. In a series of battles from August 1942 through February 1943, Allied and Japanese forces fought over the island, in particular an airfield dubbed by the U.S. as Henderson Field, after Marine Major Lofton Henderson, who was killed in action at the Battle of Midway. The conflict was the high water mark for the Japanese in the Pacific, for after their defeat and retreat from the island in January of 1943, there began a steady decline in Japanese operations, eventually leading to their outright surrender.
The raising of that flag on Suribachi means a Marine Corps for the next 500 years.
On February 19, 1945, the Marine Corps Operation Detachment went into action. Its mission was to capture the island of Iwo Jima and the airfields it contained, which had dogged Allied forces. It was the first U.S. attack on any of Japan's home islands and consisted of over a month of brutal fighting. One of the first objectives after landing on the island was to conquer Mount Suribachi. After the Allies took the position, a photograph was taken of 6 Marines and 1 U.S. Navy corpsman raising the American flag on the mountain's peak. The raising of the flag at Iwo Jima became not only a symbol to the world at that time of the United States' assured victory over Japanese forces, but would prove to further secure the reputation of the United States Marine Corps as a brave, bold, and brilliant fighting force. Marine Attack Squadron 214 was originally nicknamed Boyington's Bastards, after their commander, Colonel Gregory Pappy Boyington, and the fact that all of the pilots were without a command and not attached to any squadron. Later, this nickname was changed because the public information officer did not believe that civilian newspapers would print the name. The squadron would come to be known as the Black Sheep Squadron, and its leader, Pappy Boyington, would go on to become one of the most famous Marine aviation aces of World War II. Pappy Boyington earned the nicknames Gramps and Pappy due to the fact that he was 10 years older than most of the men he commanded. He was 31. His exploits not only earned him the Medal of Honor, but later a TV series based on the adventures of himself and his men, Baba Black Sheep, aired for 2 seasons. Boyington and his men dismissed this as hogwash and Hollywood hokum.
We've been looking for the enemy for some time now. We finally found him. We're surrounded. That simplifies things.
Lieutenant General Louis Thurwell Chesty Puller served in some of the bloodiest, most grueling battles in both World War II and Korea. He made the previous statement at the Battle of Chosin Reservoir in Korea, where Marine forces were freezing and vastly outnumbered. Puller is one of, if not the most decorated Marine of all time. He is the only Marine to be awarded 5 Navy Crosses ever. On the 30th of June, 1909, a Marine Corps officer evaluation was filed that read,
"This officer has not shown that he appreciates the responsibilities of his position as an officer, and unless there is a decisive improvement, his relations will not be to the advantage of the service."
The officer to whom this evaluation refers, Alexander A. Vandergrift, not only went on to be awarded the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross for his command of the 1st Marine Division in the Solomon Islands attack, defense and occupation, and became the first active duty Marine to attain a 4-star rank, but was also named the 18th Commandant of the Marine Corps on January 1st, 1944. After World War II, the Marine Corps faced institutional threats of not only dissolution, but of possible absorption by the Army. Speaking to the Senate Committee on Naval Affairs on May 6, 1946, the then Commandant gave his famous bended knee speech in order to gain the favor of Congress in keeping the Marine Corps as an independent branch of the United States military.
The Marine Corps believes that it has earned this right to have its future decided by the legislative body which created it, nothing more. Sentiment is not a valid consideration in determining questions of national security. We have pride in ourselves and in our past, but we do not rest our case on any presumed ground of gratitude owing us from the nation. The bended knee is not a tradition of our Corps. If the Marine, as a fighting man, has not made a case for himself after 170 years of service, he must go. But I think you will agree with me that he has earned the right to depart with dignity and honor, not by subjugation to the status of uselessness and servility planned for him by the War Department.
The idea to use the Navajo for secure communications came from Philip Johnston, the son of a missionary to the Navajos and one of the few non-Navajos who spoke their language fluently. Johnston believed that the Navajo language answered the military requirement for an undecipherable code because Navajo is an unwritten language of extreme complexity. Its syntax and tonal qualities, not to mention dialects, make it unintelligible to anyone without extensive exposure and training. It has no alphabet or symbols and is spoken only on the Navajo lands of the American Southwest. One estimate indicates that less than 30 non-Navajos, none of them Japanese, could understand the language at the outbreak of World War II. Code talkers were present at the battles of Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu, and Iwo Jima. They took part in every assault that the U.S. Marines conducted in the Pacific from 1942 through 1945. They served in all 6 Marine divisions, Marine Raider battalions, and Marine parachute units, transmitting messages by telephone and radio in their native language in a code that the Japanese never broke. The Navajo code talkers would also come to be recognized as the first non-white soldiers to serve alongside white soldiers in a still largely segregated Marine Corps. The Marine Corps grew to include 6 divisions, 5 air wings, and more than 400,000 supporting troops by the end of World War II. Nearly 20,000 Marines were killed and over 68,000 were wounded. 82 Marines received the Medal of Honor. After World War II, with the advent of superior new technologies in the air, such as the atom bomb, many officials no longer saw a need for an amphibious fighting force.
There's no reason for having a Navy and a Marine Corps. General Bradley tells me amphibious operations are a thing of the past. We'll never have any more amphibious operations. That does away with the Marine Corps.
Far from having outlived their usefulness, the Foreign Service Act of 1946 authorized the Secretary of the Navy to assign Marines to serve under senior diplomatic officers at foreign posts at the request of the Secretary of State. Today, Marine security guards number around 1,000 at 150 detachments across the globe. Further solidifying the Marines' place as a branch of the United States Armed Forces, the National Security Act of 1947 clearly defines, in Section 606 of the document, the term Armed Forces means the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. The document further codifies the Marines as subjugate to the Navy per tradition. In essence, the document merely put in black and white what every Marine was already assured of. But now, it ensured that the organization was a force that was here to stay. The National Security Act of 1947 was largely responsible for the foundation of the active 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Marines and 4th Marine Division, made up of Marine reservists as well as the 1st through 4th Marine aircraft wings. For almost a month in 1944, the 2nd and 4th Marine Division, as well as the 27th Infantry and Artillery and Amphibious Corps, were engaged in fighting the Battle of Saipan in the Pacific. In an overall hellish war, this skirmish earned the nicknames Death Valley and Purple Heart Ridge due to the high casualties that the U.S. forces suffered in places like Mount Tapachau on the island. It was a trial by fire for ammunition handlers and stevedores assigned to the 3rd Marine Ammunition Company, who were all African American. On June 25, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt eliminated racial discrimination from federal departments, agencies, the military, and private defense contractors with Executive Order 8802. While blacks were permitted to enlist in the Marine Corps, they still served in separate units, usually with white commanding officers and drill instructors. World War II saw the training and deployment of over 8,000 African-American troops, and Marine Corps General Alexander Vandergrift remarked, after the meritorious performance of the 3rd Marine Ammunition Company at Saipan,
"The Negro Marines are no longer on trial. They are Marines, period."
The integration of African Americans was gradual, leading to unified training in 1949, and finally full integration by 1960. While women had been allowed to enlist in the Marine Corps Reserve in 1918, at the onset of World War I, it was in February of 1943 that the United States Marine Corps Women's Reserve was established. Under the direction of then Colonel Ruth Cheney Streeter, the new recruits began training at Mount Holyoke College in South Hadley, Massachusetts. Later classes, over 19,000 recruits, completed their training at the Women's Reserve Permanent Facilities in New River, North Carolina. For her work with this new program and the new recruits, Streeter was awarded the Legion of Merit, as well as the American Campaign and World War II Victory Medals. Exercising judgment, initiative, and ability, Colonel Streeter rendered distinctive service in directing the planning and organization of the Women's Reserve of the Marine Corps and skillfully integrating women into the basic structure of the Corps, carefully selected, trained, and properly assigned them as replacements for men in shore establishments. Throughout the war, women were assigned to over 200 positions, including radio and telegraph operator, aerial gunnery instructor, parachute rigger, and photographer. By the end of World War II, 85% of Marine Corps personnel assigned to headquarters were women. After the war, only 1,000 of the 20,000 enlisted women were retained for active duty, and in 1948, Congress passed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, which finally made women a permanent fixture in the Marine Corps. During the Korean War, 2,700 female Marines served either overseas or stateside, and in 1978, Margaret A. Brewer, another Legion of Merit awardee, would become the first female Marine to achieve the rank of general. Today, women serve in 93% of all occupational fields of the Marine Corps and constitute over 6% of the Corps' end strength. They are an integral and essential part of the United States Marine Corps. The highest ranking officer in the United States Marine Corps is the Commandant. Throughout the organization's 236-year history, 35 men have served in this position, including the current Commandant, General James F. Amos. The Commandant of the Marine Corps reports to the U.S. Secretary of the Navy and is a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The CMC organizes the policy, plans, and programs for the Marine Corps, in addition to advising the President, Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, Homeland Security Council, and the Secretary of the Navy on Marine Corps matters. The grand old man of the Marine Corps, Colonel Archibald Henderson, was the longest-serving commandant, serving for 39 years between 1820 and 1859. He was not only instrumental in preventing the Marine Corps' absorption into the U.S. Army, but in shaping, refining, and expanding the Marine Corps role in expeditionary warfare and rapid deployment. It is arguable that the Commandant of the Marine Corps would never have received a spot on the Joint Chiefs of Staff without the efforts of General Lemuel C. Shepard, Jr., the 20th Commandant of the Marine Corps. Shepard was a veteran of both World Wars and Korea. A graduate of the Virginia Military Institute, Shepard completed his training early to enlist in the Marines and wound up serving in the Battle of Belleau Wood, and for his gallantry was awarded the Army Distinguished Service Cross, the Navy Cross, and the French Croix de Guerre. Shepard commanded the 1st Provisional Marine Brigade in the invasion and recapture of Guam during World War II and received the Distinguished Service Medal as well as a promotion to Major General. In 1952, Shepard was appointed the 20th Commandant of the Marine Corps by President Harry S. Truman, and shortly thereafter earned the coveted spot on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the first CMC to ever become a member. When the United States Armed Forces entered Korea in 1950, the 1st Provisional Marine Brigade held the line at the Battle of Pusan. At the Battle of Incheon, General Douglas MacArthur called on the ground and air forces of the Marines to make an amphibious landing. The operation was a success, and U.S. and UN forces were able to decimate the North Korean lines and send the enemy forces on the run near the Yalu River. It was the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, or the Frozen Chosin, as it came to be called, that became another testament to the will, resolve, and tenacity of the United States Marine Corps. UN and U.S. forces were surrounded by over 60,000 members of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army fighting alongside the North Koreans. a battle ensued over the frozen terrain that lasted 19 days. Allied forces were able to inflict crippling losses upon the Chinese soldiers, allowing UN forces to successfully evacuate the frozen death trap. The incident, like Belleau Wood in World War I or Iwo Jima in World War II, further cemented the image of the toughness and resolve of the United States Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps held the 38th parallel until the armistice of 1953. Ted Williams, a popular baseball player for the Boston Red Sox and World War II veteran, was recalled into active duty for the Korean War in 1952. Williams had served as a flight instructor for the Marines in World War II and was awaiting deployment when the war in the Pacific ended. By the time he was recalled for duty in Korea, Williams was 33 years old and had not flown any aircraft in over 8 years. Williams turned down an offer to play for the Armed Services baseball team, instead opting to fight. He went on to fly 39 combat missions during the war before being grounded with pneumonia and an inner ear infection. Williams sacrificed what would have surely been career highs in baseball, such as the opportunity to surpass Babe Ruth's home run record and Hank Aaron's RBI totals, in order to do what he felt was his patriotic duty. General Douglas MacArthur was named by Williams as one of his idols, and on Williams' 40th birthday, the general is reported to have sent the ball player an oil painting of himself bearing this inscription:
To Ted Williams, not only America's greatest baseball player, but a great American who served his country. Your friend, Douglas MacArthur, General, U.S. Army.
During the final half of Williams' tenure as a Marine pilot, he served alongside another notable Marine, flying as the wingman to future astronaut John Glenn. John Glenn flew 59 missions as a fighter pilot for the Marines during World War II. Then, with Marine Attack Squadron 311, he flew the F-9F Panther Jet Interceptor for 63 combat missions, earning a reputation as a magnet for enemy flak, twice returning to base with more than 250 flak holes in his plane. As part of an inter-service exchange program, Glenn then flew 27 missions in the F-86F Sabre with the United States Air Force, 4th Fighter Wing. After serving as a test pilot for a few years, Glenn was then selected as one of the original group of 7 astronauts chosen to work on Project Mercury, in spite of not having a college degree. On February 20th, 1962, John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. A Marine Corps fighter pilot from 1954 through 1956, Fred Hayes was selected in 1966, among 19 others, as new astronauts for NASA. He served as a backup lunar module pilot for the Apollo 8 and 11 missions, and flew as the module pilot on the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission. Hayes later worked with the Space Shuttle program, participating in the approach and landing tests at Edwards Air Force Base. He was slated to pilot the shuttle on a mission to Skylab, but delays, budget cuts, and the deterioration of the space station led to the abandonment of that mission.
My fellow Americans, not long ago I received a letter from a woman in the Midwest. She wrote, "Dear Mr. President, in my humble way, I am writing to you about the crisis in Vietnam. I have a son who is now in Vietnam. My husband served in World War II. Our country was at war. But now, this time, it's just something that I don't understand. Why?"
In addition to the fighting in Da Nang, Hue, and Khe Sanh, the U.S. Marine Corps in the Vietnam War also participated in the Combined Action Program, an effective counterinsurgency tool used to combat the intense guerrilla warfare that the U.S. forces faced, in addition to the traditional military fighting. Marine platoons would station in and around rural Vietnamese villages and provide training and security from Viet Cong belligerents for the people who lived there. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara ruminated on the program.
The large unit operations war, which we know best how to fight and where we have had our successes, is largely irrelevant to pacification as long as we do not have it. Success in pacification depends on the interrelated functions of providing physical security, destroying the VC apparatus, motivating the people to cooperate, and establishing responsive local government.
Indeed, the CAP program was one of the few lasting and successful operations of the Vietnam War. It is estimated that none of the over 200 villages that were a part of this program were ever given over to Viet Cong control. At midnight, on January 30th, 1968, members of the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army attacked every provincial capital in the 1st and 2nd Corps tactical zones in South Vietnam. While the mortar and rocket attacks, followed by massed ground assaults, came somewhat as a surprise, the U.S. forces were able to drive back most of the communist attackers by daybreak, including a nearly successful attack upon the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, which was thwarted by military police and Marine security guards with a loss of only 5. As his fellow Marines were wounded or killed in the fighting in Vietnam, Carlos Hancock was avenging them with each target who entered his sights. Hancock, a gunnery sergeant who went on to record 93 confirmed kills in Vietnam, also became the most renowned Marine Corps sniper of all time. Hancock once famously shot an enemy sniper through the enemy's own rifle scope, striking the man in the eye and killing him. After the sheer number of enemies taken out by Hancock had become known, the North Vietnamese Army placed a bounty on Hancock's head for $30,000. It is the record for any bounty placed on a sniper by the NVA, who typically offered $1,000 to $2,000. Later in his career, Hancock advised in the creation of the Marine Corps Sniper Training Program, and as well trained police and other law enforcement agencies' snipers. Most famously, Hancock had previously trained members of SEAL Team 6, the task force ultimately responsible for killing Osama bin Laden in 2011. Even in the weeks before the fall of Saigon, U.S. Ambassador Graham Martin was optimistic that South Vietnamese forces could hold back the crushing communist throngs that had begun to surround South Vietnam's capital city. Martin did not want to show any signs of possible United States abandonment of the country. However, on April 29, 1975, Tan Son Nhut Airport was attacked, forcing an early evacuation. In addition to the Marine security guards and U.S. forces outside the embassy, another 130 Marines from the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines were called in to reinforce the perimeter as the compound was evacuated. Marine pilots accumulated over 1,000 flight hours and flew over 600 sorties during Operation Frequent Wind, the official name of the evacuation plan. By 11:30 on April 30th, the NVA, now calling themselves the People's Army of Vietnam, stormed the gates of the embassy and raised their flag above the building, signaling an end to the Vietnam War.
First, we didn't know ourselves We thought that we were going into another Korean War, but this was a different country. Secondly, we didn't know our South Vietnamese allies, and we knew less about North Vietnam. Who was Ho Chi Minh? Nobody really knew. So, until we know the enemy, and know our allies, and know ourselves, we'd better keep out of this kind of dirty business. It's very dangerous.
After the Vietnam War, many Americans were left disillusioned by the seeming futility of the United States military efforts in Korea and Vietnam. During and after the Vietnam War, the Marine Corps hit one of its lowest points in its history. High rates of courts-martial, non-judicial punishments, desertion, and an increasing disdain for the military in general by the American people plagued the devil dogs. In the late 1970s, the Corps began to discharge its worst-performing recruits and focused on recruiting and training the best soldiers they could find. Soon after, the Corps was able to resume its expeditionary role. Stationed in Beirut in 1982, during the Lebanese Civil War, the 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines joined the multinational force in Lebanon to help keep the peace. The previous year had seen the Palestine Liberation Organization retreating to Tunisia, but increased violence led to an order by Ronald Reagan to return to the troubled country. The MNF drew fire from a number of belligerents and enemy factions, and in April of 1983, the United States Embassy was bombed, followed in October by the French military and U.S. Marine barracks at the Beirut airport. Over 200 Marines lost their lives in the attack. It was the largest peacetime loss of life, as well as the deadliest single-day death toll for the Marine Corps since the Battle of Iwo Jima during World War II. The bombing all but lost the American public's support of intervention in Beirut, and in February of 1984, the Marines exited Lebanon.
The USMC and the MNF efforts in Beirut in both the Lebanon War against the PLO and the Civil War have been called by historians as the de facto first operation in the War on Terror.
The Marine Corps Aviation Component is an organic appendage to the Corps' mission. Using both jet planes, or fixed-wing, and helicopters, or rotary-wing aircraft, the Marine aircraft are crucial to providing close air support and allowing for amphibious landings and attacks. Marine aviation dates back to 1912 and first came into its own during World War I, where the 1st Marine Aviation Force provided bomber and fighter support to the Navy's day-wing Northern Bombing Group over France. The Fleet Marine Force, established in 1933, was developed to focus on amphibious landing and also seizing naval bases. But the tactics were perfected in World War II with the creation of the Landing Force Air Support Control Units, which were responsible for the successful landings on Pacific islands like Okinawa and Iwo Jima. Marine fighter pilots in Pacific Theater during World War II were responsible for the downing of over 2,000 Japanese planes. Jet aircraft and helicopters made their debut and had their trial by fire in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. The light helicopters, like the HO-3S-1, only made the Corps' signature amphibious landings more logistically sound. As the technology evolves, so does the aviation wing of the United States Marine Corps. The Corps is using experimental aircraft, like the V-22 Osprey, as well as unmanned aerial vehicles, often referred to as drones, for reconnaissance, refueling, and strike capabilities. Any marine aviation aircraft carrying the President of the United States usually a helicopter operated by the HMX-1 Nighthawk Squadron, goes by the call sign Marine 1. Initially, responsibility for helicopter transportation of the President and Vice President was shared with the Army, but the Marines took sole responsibility in 1976. Often, Marine 1 will take off and land on the south lawn of the White House, when either Air Force One or a motorcade is not an option for travel. Marine 1 will also be used to connect with Air Force One on longer journeys. The helicopter today most often used would be the VH-3D Sea King or the VH-60N Whitehawk. The first helicopter used for this purpose was the Sikorsky UH-34 Seahorse helicopter in 1957 to transport President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Marine 1 helicopters will always travel in packs of 5 identical helicopters, and the Marines operating the aircraft, rather than the standard utility uniform, will wear the dress blue Charlie or Delta. The first Gulf War saw the largest Marine Corps operation in history. With the liberation of Kuwait from the invading Iraqi forces led by Saddam Hussein in 1991, the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force employed over 90,000 soldiers on the land, sea, and in the air. The offensive was launched in January, and a total of 24 Marines gave their lives before the ceasefire took effect over a month later.
A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. Today our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it's prepared.
On September 11th, 2001, the War on Terror was officially declared after an extremist terrorist organization hijacked a number of commercial airliners and flew them into various targets across the United States. One struck the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. 2 more struck the towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, killing thousands. President George W. Bush laid out the mission for the United States Armed Forces: the defeat of Al-Qaeda, other terrorist groups, and any nation that supports or harbors terrorists. Marine forces were staged in Uzbekistan and Pakistan, ready to enter Afghanistan, a nation known to be under siege by the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. The 15th and 26th Marine Expeditionary Units were the first conventional forces to enter the country as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. And in December of 2001, the Marines took Kandahar International Airport. Since then, Marines have engaged in fighting with both Al-Qaeda and Taliban forces in various counterinsurgency efforts, such as those in the Helmand province, a known Taliban stronghold, and a center of opium production. In 2009, President Barack Obama deployed an additional 11,000 troops into the area to assist the largely British forces in quashing the insurgency. The Marines' 1st Marine Expeditionary Force returned to Iraq once again in 2003 with the invasion of U.S. forces as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Thanks to their valiant efforts, the force was given the honor of a Presidential Unit Citation, the first awarded to a Marine unit since 1963. For extraordinary heroism and outstanding performance in action, against enemy forces in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom from 21st March to 24th April 2003. During this period, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, MEF, REIN, conducted the longest sequence of coordinated combined arms overland attacks in the history of the Marine Corps. From the border between Kuwait and Iraq to the culmination of hostilities north of Baghdad, 1st MEF advanced nearly 800 kilometers under sustained and heavy combat. Utilizing the devastating combat power of organic aviation assets, coupled with awesome power resident in the ground combat elements, and maintaining momentum through the Herculean efforts of combat service support elements, 1st MEF destroyed 9 Iraqi divisions. This awesome display of combat power was accomplished while simultaneously freeing the Iraqi people from more than 30 years of oppression and reestablishing basic infrastructure in the country. During the 33 days of combat, to the transition to civil military operations, 1st MEF sustained a tempo of operations never before seen on the modern battlefield, conducting 4 major river crossings, maintaining the initiative, and sustaining forces. The ferocity and duration of the campaign was made possible through the skills and determination of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and coalition partners comprising 1st MEF at all levels, all echelons, and in all occupational fields. By their devotion to duty, the officers and enlisted personnel of 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, REIN, reflect great credit upon themselves and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. The Marines remained in Iraq, spearheading operations in Baghdad and Fallujah before handing over responsibilities to the United States Army when the Corps officially ended their service there in January of 2010. Over 1,000 Marines were killed in action, and Corporal Jason Dunham received the Medal of Honor. The President of the United States, in the name of the Congress, takes pride in presenting the Medal of Honor posthumously to Corporal Jason L. Dunham, United States Marine Corps, for service as set forth in the following citation: for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as Rifle Squad Leader, 4th Platoon, Company K, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines Reinforced, Regimental Combat Team 7, 1st Marine Division Reinforced, on April 14th, 2004. Corporal Dunham's squad was conducting a reconnaissance mission in the town of Karbala, Iraq, when they heard rocket-propelled grenade and small arms fire erupt approximately 2 kilometers to the west. Corporal Dunham led his combined anti-armor team towards the engagement to provide fire support to their battalion commander's convoy, which had been ambushed as it was traveling to Camp Husabai. As Corporal Dunham and his Marines advanced, they quickly began to receive enemy fire. Corporal Dunham ordered his squad to dismount their vehicles and led one of his fire teams on foot several blocks south of the ambushed convoy. Discovering 7 Iraqi vehicles in a column attempting to depart, Corporal Dunham and his team stopped the vehicles to search them for weapons. As they approached the vehicles, an insurgent leapt out and attacked Corporal Dunham. Corporal Dunham wrestled the insurgent to the ground, and in the ensuing struggle, saw the insurgent release a grenade. Corporal Dunham immediately alerted his fellow Marines to the threat. Aware of the imminent danger, and without hesitation, Corporal Dunham covered the grenade with his helmet and body, bearing the brunt of the explosion and shielding his Marines from the blast. In an ultimate and selfless act of bravery, in which he was mortally wounded, he saved the lives of at least 2 fellow Marines. By his undaunted courage, intrepid fighting spirit, and unwavering devotion to duty, Corporal Dunham gallantly gave his life for his country, thereby reflecting great credit upon himself and upholding the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. In 2010, the United States Marine Corps included over 200,000 Marines in active duty, as well as around 40,000 reservists. These numbers make the Corps the smallest armed forces branch in the Department of Defense. Its units are still the first to deploy in the event of crisis, and tactics and technology that has been developing since World War II only help close the gap from mission statement to mission completion. Programs such as the Military Sealift Prepositioning Program ensure that military equipment and supplies are stored on sea vessels throughout the world to equip first responding Marine and other U.S. military units, enabling them to hold a defensive line while more troops can prepare and deploy. Since the Marines are able to mobilize much faster than other branches, they are often the first to help during natural disasters or evacuations, providing humanitarian relief and security, such as when the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit provided aid to Haiti after the 2010 earthquake. Back home in the United States, the Marine Corps continued to serve their communities with programs like Toys for Tots, providing toys and clothes to needy children at Christmas time, a program that has been in effect since 1949. New equipment and vehicles, such as the V-22 Osprey, which combines the vertical and short capabilities and includes functionalities of both the helicopter and turboprop aircraft, keep the Marine Corps able to strike amphibiously as the occasion warrants. The Corps is also developing a new amphibious combat vehicle to replace the assault amphibious vehicle, and they are also hoping to reduce their logistical requirements and eliminate all liquid fuel use for expeditionary forces, except for highly efficient vehicles, by 2025. The uniform of the United States Marine is not adorned with unit patches, badges, decorations, or other symbols, not even the U.S. flag. The simplicity of the uniform and the courage of those who wear it are the symbols of proud tradition and military superiority. The Marine motto Semper Fidelis, or always faithful, is an apt one. The men and women of the United States Marine Corps have, throughout their colorful history, received high honors and victories, and crushing defeat and denigration, even by the citizens of the land that they're sworn to defend. Yet the Corps remains ever diligent and steadfast, ready to strike at a moment's notice on the land, sea, or in the air. The United States Marine Corps. Semper Fi, do or die.
This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. It is my life. I must master it as I must master my life. Without me, my rifle is useless. Without my rifle, I am useless. I must fire my rifle true. I must shoot straighter than the enemy who is trying to kill me. I must shoot him before he shoots me. I will. My rifle and I know that what counts in war is not the rounds we fire, the noise of our burst, or the smoke we make. We know that it is the hits that count. We will hit. My rifle is human, even as I am human, because it is my life. Thus, I will learn it as a brother. I will learn its weaknesses, its strengths, its parts, its accessories, its sights, and its barrel. I will keep my rifle clean and ready, even as I am clean and ready. We will become part of each other. Before God, I swear this creed. My rifle and I are the defenders of my country. We are the masters of our enemy. We are the saviors of my life. So be it until victory is America's and there is no enemy.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.